at the Morris Jamel Mansion, we see a clear representation of wealth, privilege, and class distinctions from the colonial era. This mansion stood as a symbol of status, while just steps away, Sylvan Terrace was home to the working class, a vivid contrast that mirrors the class divisions we'll explore in this course. Before race became the primary social divider, class distinctions, like those between landowners and laborers, were the backbone of early American society. Where I stand today tells a small story of these ongoing class struggles, from its roots in wealth to its evolution into a system predicated on race. This Capital, Race, and Concordia course will encourage you to think about the African American experience in ways that put class, not race, at the center of the analysis. For the next 8 weeks, we will explore how the inequalities of class structures have structured not only the lives of African Americans, but the overall course of American history, using Pierre Bourdieu's theories of capital, social, cultural, and symbolic as our analytical lenses. I'll show you how, while race has indeed been central, it is the compounding of race with class that accounts for many of the opportunities and challenges that African Americans have faced from Reconstruction to today. We will then conclude by applying Bourdieu's insights to current events, starting with our modern origins in early America, where we'll aim to understand the beginnings of class, and then proceeding to the Reconstruction era in the US, where newly emancipated African Americans sought valuable social capital. Finally, we will examine the growth of the Black middle class and the civil rights movement before asking you to deploy the theoretical tools back to some pressing questions of class and race today. Now, we began not by examining race as an original distinction shaping early American society, but by looking at class differences that long predicated race as an original distinction. Only by appreciating this history can we understand how the terms of inequality were set before any categories we have come to associate with race as a biological definition were created. We start with class rather than race because class served as the skeleton that the body politic was hung on when the modern American Republic was founded, and race was how it was fleshed out and delineated. Prior to enslaved Africans becoming the primary source of labor for America's wealth, America's primary underclass was poor whites. This is the structure that you're going to see as you go through this course, how race was added to class divisions in order to make sure that poor whites and blacks remained at the bottom together. As described by Pierre Bourdieu in his theory of habitus and field, the process of accumulating capital, social, cultural, symbolic, positions one within society. This course treats class as a series of status distinctions that African Americans made and that was made for them. Now, to organize and explain social stratification during a period of intense racial oppression. Now, we begin with early class distinctions to clarify how inequality was organized upon emancipation and how it continues to structure both race and class in modern America. Don Jordan details another aspect of American history that has been relegated to a narrowing side path: white indentured servitude. Now, the first colonists who came to America from Britain In Ireland, mostly young men, women, lived and labored in almost the identical conditions as forced slavery, with nearly as high a rate of mortality before their servitude ended. He dispels the myth that only Black Africans were the victims of slave labor. The US economy from the beginning was predicated on a class of penniless bottom classes, regardless of racial background. This returns us to the idea Bourdieu gives us. As we consider this indentured servitude through his lens, these white servants lacked the cultural and symbolic capital to help them climb the social hierarchy. Their brutal, unskilled labor was necessary for the economy to function, yet it did not earn them space within it. Following the rise of more institutionalized African slavery, white indentured servitude dwindled. But class structures, which kept the poor at the bottom, endured. The crucial point from Eisenberg and Jordan's work is that class, not race, was the first great sorting of American society. And the division was a result of who owned land, wealth, and the ability to make capital. Race came later as a way of securing not only the elite rich, but also the lower orders against each other, making sure that there was still someone below poor whites themselves on the social ladder. This gradual congealing of race as the primary marker of difference did not eclipse class, but rather gelled it into the racial matrix that would dominate American society for centuries. The movement from class based oppression to race based stratification helps explain the intertwining of these two factors that we will be exploring over the course of the semester. Almost able to see our own divisions in these dawning structures of American class. In much of the same way that Frederick Douglass's celebrated speech in 1852 asked us if America had ever been or would ever be free, given that so many were shackled to the system. We begin to wonder if economic or social mobility is a real possibility for masses of people, or if equality truly belonged to the Republican dream alone, not the reality for the have-nots. Eisenberg's white trash is too directly engaged with the contemporary class struggle to ignore. Wealth and privilege still determine much about who gets opportunity, just as they did in the colonial America. In what follows, we will focus on Bourdieu and his theories relating to how social, cultural, and symbolic capital are unevenly distributed across racial and class lines. We will look at how African Americans have historically been challenged to cope with a social system in which they often started with less capital than whites, and how some have been able to acquire it in the face of historical barriers. The course starts with class because of the initial importance of these distinctions in the history of American inequality. They will continue to be important as we move forward, and we'll see how class and race intersected in the African American story, as well as how morality and religion and class all contributed to the emergent nature of race in early America. This sets the stage for the much more racially infused culture of inequality that would emerge in the 19th century. By using Bourdieu's theory, we'll come to see new ways that African Americans have pursued social, cultural, and symbolic capital, and how those pursuits have become lives and life worlds. And we'll finally begin to see how class, not race alone, made the U.S. nation that it is, and how that understanding might address today's inequalities. I'll see you next time.